Picture this, a child incapable of falling prey to distractions and thus follows a strict routine of intense crying until he receives what he wants. Let me use an example. So one day, this child's mother had told him that they would be going to the park after completing the groceries, but in true Mother Nature-ish fashion, it rains and then they couldn't go to the park. So the child cried for hours upon hours. Was this out of stubbornness? Not exactly, but it was out of the intense fear that the world would genuinely fall apart if things could not go as planned. Early onset panic disorder. Now picture this same child, a couple years older, trying to make friends. As to be expected, he does, but when it comes time to face those bully kids, they're nowhere to be found. Maybe they were just afraid of being bullied themselves, or maybe this child was so genuinely afraid of not being able to make friends that he was more than happy with the safe ones. In other words, he grew comfortable with the comfortable. Early onset generalized anxiety disorder. In the 6th grade, my parents got a nasty divorce, and they put my brother and I in the middle of it. But before I even knew that they were for sure getting a divorce, I met my soon-to-be stepmother and stepbrother. He and I got along fairly well, but she and I had a tense divide between us, which led to an explosion at the 8th grade, and she and I have never spoken since. So now, on top of being a child from a broken home, one half of that broken home is broken as well. Post-traumatic stress disorder. In the 9th grade, my parents got a nasty divorce, and the therapist I was seeing at the time realized I needed more help than a free clinic conversation once every couple of weeks. So she put my name on a waiting list. And when I finally reached the top, I saw a psychiatrist who somewhat misdiagnosed me, but he at least gave me the gift of the key to open the door and talk to my doctor about my mental health. That is when we found me a therapist who worked more specially within my case type, and I started medication. And although it took a long time to reach a dose that worked from that starting 25 milligrams, this July would have marked the 2nd-year anniversary of me starting Zoloft for anxiety and depression. But with all good things comes some bad, and this July will mark the 3rd-month anniversary of me starting a close sister medication. And because of this, I've been able to be the most me that I've ever been before. But with all that aside, I could barely bring myself to step out onto the stage today, because even though I am being treated, I am still not rid of my illness. One thing I've noticed here in high school is that people say stuff that is seemingly innocent, but is actually harmful to many people. Mental health has begun to be a more spoken of topic recently, making it less taboo in some respects. And that's positive, because people have been able to share their stories, making me feel less alone and less crazy. And although my teachers respond to my taking the rare mental health day in the same manner as my taking a sick day, and although I hear my fellow peers opening up about their struggles, kids make jokes. The circulation of memes, jokes, and popular commentary surrounding mental illness, for the most part, has been negative, for it makes it seem to be less important and less difficult to deal with than it actually is. So with the normalization of this conversation, we've also been seeing the invalidation of people struggling with mental illnesses. If you're struggling to picture what I mean, some of the jokes I've heard most frequently over my 3 years in high school include, "You're so OCD, blank is giving me anxiety and or depression, and I'm going to kill myself." This doesn't detract from their meaning. The Mayo Clinic describes obsessive-compulsive disorder, otherwise known as OCD, as a pattern of unreasonable thoughts and fears that lead you to do repetitive behaviors which interfere with your daily activities and cause significant distress. Depression is described as a persistent feeling of sadness and loss of interest, which affect how you feel, think, and behave, resulting in a variety of emotional and physical problems. And lastly, suicidal tendencies are described as a reaction to a stressful life situation in which the first symptom listed by the Mayo Clinic is when someone talks about suicide in a nonchalant way, saying stuff like, "I'm going to kill myself." These tendencies are everywhere, but I for one feel that I owe it to the people I love and the people I have lost to mental illness to stand up against this. I'd actually once gone to my friend for help, and her response was, "Me too, my science test sucked this morning." I want you all to think of a time in which you heard or saw something like this. And now broaden that, because we're starting to see that everywhere. And it's all tying back to one's mental health. This isn't just a mental health issue. This is a human issue. And I, for one, feel that I owe it to the people in my community that I've heard struggling with this to note this. Because one thing I can never expect any of you sitting in front of me today to do is know everything. But the one thing I do expect of you is to note that which you don't know and make an honest and active attempt every single day to educate yourself so that you can be a genuinely helping hand ready for those people who are struggling in your community. I want you all to think of a time in which you should have asked someone for help, or when someone should have asked you. But more importantly, I want you to think about what the response would have been. I want you all to go back to kindergarten and remember that lesson about thinking before you speak, and to make a conscious decision every single day and not spreading these microaggressions. To help you out with this, if you think someone is struggling with mental health, just ask them, do you want to talk? And if you hear or see one of these things being spread around, a simple, where is this coming from, can be way more than enough to spread the conversation like wildfire. So before I go, please start to educate yourselves, because mental illness is real, and I am proof of that.